We're good, Mendel. Okay. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Talmud Yerushalmi, Maseches Berachos, Daf Beis. We are up to Daf Beis, Amud Aleph, 8 lines from the top of the Amud by the dot Tanei. Quickly recapping, the Mishnah began by telling us that the time from when you can read the Shema is from the time that Kohanim go out to eat their Truma, which means from Tzeis HaKechavim, and the Gemara on Daf Aleph, Amud Beis, introduced the Braisa. The Braisa is a Tanei Rabbi Chia, and that is from the time that people, as the Gemara just clarified, that live in small villages, eat their Friday night meal. And as we explained, they eat their Friday night meal. They begin the meal when it's still at the end of the day. Take, like the Gemara tells us, or like the Gemara quoted the Braisa, that Kerovim Divreim Liyoy Shavim, but it's a little bit prior to the Zman of our Mishnah. Now, that is the time from when you can read the Shema. You have to chab. They actually began to eat the meal then. Bechlal, the shuls in the times of Chazal, many of them were outside of the cities. So they began to eat their meal from the time that you can really start saying the Shema. That means that they daven prior to that. So as we left off in the Daf Aleph, they said the Shema, which means they daven ma'ariv prior to the Zman. So says the Gemara, you should know, Tanei, we learned in a Braisa that hakoyder koydem lachein, that if a person reads prior to the Zman, right, the Charedim writes before koydem tzeis hakoychavim. It's good to keep a finger on Charedim, like we spoke out on Daf Aleph, even though we don't have Rishonim, and even though it's only the Pnei Moshe that consistently goes through the whole Talmud Yerushalmi, but in Maseches Berachos, we're going to use the Charedim as the Iker Mefayrish. We're going to go back and forth sometimes to the Pnei Moshe, to the Rash Cyrilio, but we're going to focus over here. So let's go on Tzeis HaKechavim. So the Braisa says that if you did that, Lo Yotzi Yedei Chavos. So now comes the Gemara and asks the question, Im Kei Noi Bazoi Lama Koydin Oisa Bebeis HaKnesses. Why do we read the Shema in Shul? In other words, especially since we established that the people that live in the small villages, they daven prior to the Zman. So Bishleim, again, just to repeat the Charedim quotes from Talmud Bavli, Berachos Daf Chav Zayin, that being Mekabel Shabbos early is not what the Gemara is asking about. That we know you can do. You can take in Shabbos early. Right? The Rav Matzli Shal Shabbos, Be'erev Shabbos. The only question is, when it comes to the mitzvah of reading the Shema in Ma'ariv, why Bechlal did you read it? So Amar Rabbi Yosi ein koiden oisa b'beis haknesses b'shvil lotzeis yedei chavasei. Indeed, it's not read in order to fulfill the obligation of the recitation of the Shema b'shach b'cha. Ela kedei lamoid b'tfila mitoich devar shel Torah. It's only to start davening Shmoyne Esrei of Ma'ariv after saying a few words of Torah, just like before the Shmoyne Esrei of Mincha. We say the Ashrei, Shmoyne Esrei. So according to the way we're going to learn, the way the Charedim learns, and many others learn Pshat in the Yerushalmi, that indeed they did not say Birchos Kriya Shema when they davened Ma'ariv early. They davened Ma'ariv early, they said the Shmoyne Esrei. Elama, instead of going straight into the Shmoyne Esrei to say words of Torah, they said the Shema, which would then mean, clearly, according to the way we're learning, that's the way Rashi learns in Talmud Bavli, that when were they yoytze the obligation of reciting the Shema at night by Kriya Shema Shalamit. And l'chu'ura, that will go into, just to know, that will go into another whole machloikas, Rishonim. What is the mitzvah of reciting the Shema? What are the options? Midoiraisa, the first parsha, the first and the second, the first, second, and third. But whichever shita you're going to follow, that will oblige you by Kriya Shema Shalamita to read that amount. Or to word it in other words, that according to this, whether it's Doiraisa or the Rabbanan, then when you read the Shema, the Kriya Shema Shalamita, you have to read the whole Shema. If you would be Yoitzi Yedei Chayvasai during Ma'ariv, then by Krishma Shalamita, you could read only the first parsha. But that's what the Gemara, that's the way we're learning the Pshat in the Gemara over here, which is quite amazing, which means that the whole Maitiv is not the way we have it fixed today, halacha lamaisa, that no matter when we daven Maitiv, we daven the whole Maitiv. It didn't work that way. Whenever they would daven Maitiv, before the Zman of reading the Shema, they would begin by saying the Shema, mamash like Ashrei, Mincha, Ashrei, Shemana Esrei, Shema and Shemana Esrei. Why read the Shema? Not time to go into. First Torah, the Varshal Torah. Now, Al Pi Chasidus, just to make it clear, that there's a whole theme of how normally Tefillah comes before Torah. And that's really based on a Chazal, that a person should go from the shul, the Beis HaKnesses l'Beis HaMedrash. The Beis HaKnesses l'Beis HaMedrash. Because Tefillah brings you up to God, and then you bring the godliness back into the world by learning Torah. And that's a big inyan, to learn Torah after davening. We have that incorporated in the Tefillah. One of the reasons why we're going to say the Berachos of Pitamar Torah after Shemana Esrei is to learn Torah after davening. But then we also spoke that there's a concept of learning Torah prior to davening. In order to get ready to appreciate the greatness of God, you have to learn some Torah. That really developed by our communities by learning Chassidus before davening, which directly speaks about God. But that's the inyan of what almost all of the Jewish communities today. There is an inyan of learning Torah before davening, because time to go out of bed and to go daven, it used to be enough to say Pesukah de Zimra. What's very helpful is to learn Ephes together, and that's another source over here. So very nice. So first of all, Mendel is saying by Leil Shemurim, all of the other parts of the Kriyash Shalamita, which are also Lisagula for protection, are taka omitted. The question is, how much of the Shema do you say? It's really connected to this topic. So Mendel is saying that since on the night of Shavuos, in order to the night of Pesach, Chabayontiv, we start Yontiv at time. We're not Makabel Yontiv in early. So everyone is fulfilling the mitzvah of Kriyash Shema Nidav and Maitiv. So therefore, you can say even a shorter Shema, side of not saying all the other parts of Kriyash Shalom. Okay, says the Gemara, Rab Zeiri b'Shem Rab Yirmiyah. And just to point out, as we said in our intro, that Talmud Yerushalmi is brief. There's a brevity that we don't find in Talmud. Talmud Yerushalmi is brief vis-a-vis Talmud Bavli, that normally in the Gemara that we're used to, you quote a name of a Tana or of an Amar and you say Amar. You don't have it here that much. Like Rab Zeiri b'Shem Rab Yirmiyah. You don't say that he said, you go straight to the point. What's straight to the point? Sofek beirach al mazoyne sofek loy beirach. If a person has a doubt after they ate a share of food that's machayev them to bench mida eiraisa, the birchas hamazoin l'kula alma is the bracha that's biblical. The birchas hatoira machloikis, whether it's biblical, right? Kishem Hashem ekro hava goydel leilokenu, you have a machloikis whether it's mida eiraisa mida rabbanan. Birchas hanahenen for sure is mida rabbanan, but birchas hamazon is mida eiraisa. And that's a very important thing to remember, because people remember the klal. Safik brachas lahakal. Safik brachas lahakal is when it comes to the brachas that are midrabanan. Safik brachas lahakal is because safik derabanan is lakul. But when it comes to birchas hamazon, if you have a doubt, even though you're taking God's name, and according to many of the Shainim, that saying a bracha, right? We learned the Rambam holds a very chamurdik opinion that saying a bracha that's not needed is in violation of the third commandment. Shem Hashem alekecha lashav. So we're very careful. Nevertheless, since it could be you didn't bench, and benching is miday raisa, so safik beirach al mazoyne safik loy beirach tzarich levarach. You have to bench because dichsiv v'achalta v'savata uveirachta. No, since birchas hamazon is based on a pasuk, which means it's miday raisa. So when you have a safik miday raisa, you have to be mach, and you have to bench again.
The whole thing with just the whole thing with just the first paragraph. If you have a doubt, do you say the whole Birkat Hamazon or just the first paragraph?
So like this, the first three are considered Doiraisa. Very good point. Kevin pointed out, even though the Nusach of the first is from Moshe, and from the second is from Yeshua, and from the third is from David Ushleima, nevertheless, it's considered the Doiraisa, and the Hatoivu Meitiv that was added around 1,000 years later, that is considered Midrabana. So Kevin is pointing out, L'chayra, if it's only because of Safik, Doiraisa, L'chumra, and you're taking God's name, that you won't say the fourth. Very good. Now, Safik Yispalel, Safik Lo Yispalel. Here, Al Yispalel. The Chaver, just bekitzer. There's a machlokes between the Rambam and the Ramban. and many others, but we're going to quote them. The Ramban holds that tefillah is midrabanan. Avada, it fits, since tefillah is midrabanan. If you have a doubt whether you daven Shemona Esrei or not, then you don't daven. But even according to the Rambam and the others that follow his opinion, like the Alter Rebbe Paskins, that tefillah is doiraisa. But tefillah doiraisa means that any expression, whether of asking of God or whether of thinking of God, that already fulfills the doiraisa obligation. There's actually a Magen Avram that says, why don't we find historically that women were very dagdik to daven, even though the Alter Rebbe says they should daven Shachris and Mincha. He says because they say Moida'ani. In other words, according to the Rambam, the biblical obligation of prayer not only has no nusach, it has no fixed time, and you're yoitz in any type of communication to God that you use. So even according to the Rambam, let's go Mincha. You daven Shachris, you have a question whether you have to daven Mincha, also Al Yispalel. And now, what does Al Yispalel mean? We have to get used to the rhythm over here. So the Charedim brings two opinions. And first of all, I want you to learn, guys, the second to last line in the medium-sized lines of the Charedim. Al Yispalel could mean then you don't have to. Al Yispalel can mean you're not allowed to. So first he brings from Rabbeinu Yoina, you're not chayiv. You're not chayiv means you don't have to have a doubt. You're not chayiv. What does it mean you're not chayiv? That if you want, you could. Shmuel get the house cup. However, it says the Charedim that the flow of the Gemara won't work. You have to interpret that. Ashba says that the Lepedu Zelo Yosser Shaper Milsi the Rabbi Yechina. We didn't learn Rabbi Yechina yet. I just want you to know. I'll point it out that if the pshat of Al Yispalel means Eino Chayiv, the next step in the Gemara won't work. So therefore, the Charedim brings from B'Shem Go'oin. Ein Rishoy means you're not allowed to. Now, why would you not be allowed to? So first of all, I just quoted Shita of the Rambam that bracha that's not needed can be a Shem Hashem Lashav. He quotes from the Go'in, you're not allowed to because of Baal Tosef. Why is it Baal Tosef? So we learned in Bavli that one of the reasons why we daven is in the place of the Karbanis. You have either because the Avos, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, or because if it's because of the Karbanos, just like the Karban Tamid, only one in the morning, only one in the afternoon. And if you add to it, you're taka bingo even on Baal Tosef. So let's go with that. So the pshat here will be you're not allowed to. So that is what Ze'ira b'Shem Rabbi Yirmiyah says. Aber the Gemara Yerushalmi points out to the like Rabbi Yechanan. This won't fit with Rabbi Yechanan. We learned this in Bavli. What does Rabbi Yechanan hold? To Amar Rabbi Yechanan, guys, 3 lines before the bottom of Amud Aleph, Valavai, which, as we say in Yiddish, Halavai, Sheyispalel Adam Kol Hayom Kuloi. Halavai, you can daven as many times as you want, and we're talking about davening Shemona Esrei again and again. Why, says Rabbi Yechanan, Lama? Look how it's worded. Answers: She'ein tefillah mafsedes. Prayer is never harmful. What do we do with the Baal Tosef? What do we do with the Baal Tosef? Says the Charedim, because there's a concept called tefillas nedava. And a chanami, when you're davening, let's go back to our case. You have a doubt whether you davened or not. So then you have to have the kavanah. If I didn't daven, then I'm davening because I'm chayiv to daven. If I already daven, then I'm going to daven l'shem nedava. Just like in between the carbon tamid and the carbon of the afternoon, you can bring as many carbon oils as you want l'shem nedava. The only thing the Charedim brings down is that there's a machlokes. When you daven at tefillas nedava, do you have to add something? Which is what we do. Where do we add it? Let's say in the Shema Koilenu, before, in our Nusach, before the Nakuda, Ki Ata Shemei Tfilas Kol Peh, add your own words. And we spoke this out many times, just laha'ir, that since we're speaking formally to Hashem, even though Rahmana Liba Boy, the Ikir is the Kavana, we know that, but you have to verbalize it. It's not good to daven to God in 2 languages. So if you're davening Shemona Esrei, the Nusach of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, whenever you add to your own davening, whether it is a little for Shalema, it's time to speak to God in the language of the rest of the tefillah. So to speak it in Lashon HaKodesh, if you're davening the nusach of, so are you chayiv to add words if it's l'shem tefillas nedava? He brings a machlokes. And actually, there's an opinion that says you don't even have to do that. Eloma, you're saying in your mind, listen, if I'm chayiv, I'm chayiv. I'm not chayiv nedava. But that is Rabbi Yechanan. But the Ze'ira b'Shem Rabbi Yirmiyah holds you're not allowed to do it. And that's the Charedim. That's why he rejects the Peirush of Rabbeinu Yoina. Because if Rabbeinu Yoina's Peirush is correct, so then why would the Gemara say Utoloike Rabbi Yechon? They're both saying the same thing. You're not chayiv, but you could. Rabbi Yochanan is not saying that you're chayiv. He's saying halavai. Okay, atkan is pshit. Right, Vlad, you're with me. So like this, guys, benching, vadei doirais. Tefillah, like we explained, even l'Rambam, the formal tefillah is midrabanan. The nusach is midrabanan. Now, what's the hemshach of our topic? Second, the end of the second to last line in Daf Beis Amud Aleph, safek kara, safek like kara. What happens if you have a doubt whether you recited the Shema or not? Are you chayiv or you're not chayiv? Now, before you go to what the Gemara is going to say, what's the obvious question? Obvious question is, what's the Gemara's question? Guys, is Kriya Shema Doiraisa or the Rabbanan? We quoted, when we began Daf Aleph Amud Aleph, we quoted Me'emes HaKoren Asa Shema. So we learned the Pnei Moshe. You quoted the Gemara Bavli. Yeah, B'shach B'chov Kumecha. We should know it on our own. So since B'shach B'chov Kumecha, so it's a Doiraisa, what's B'chlal the question? Oh, so let's read the Charedim. Safek Kara. Safek Kara is like 3 lines into the widest lines under the Gemara. Kasha, Frek the Charedim, the Maimas Hapkale. What's the Gemara's question? Right? The Amar Lakaman, and he recording over here from the Yerushalmi that Reb Acha, the Kodesh Shema de Oiraisa. The Gemara says in Yerushalmi it's a Oiraisa, and Usveika L'Chumra. So what was his question? Answers the Charedim that the Shema Rabbi Yirmiyah Sfira Leikaman Amar Bavli Kriya Shema de Rabbanan. Wow. Va'af Amoiroi Deshakli Vitori Imra Ba'acha and Dafiyud in Yerushalmi Yesh Lefarish the Sovrei Hachi Kid in a Farish Lekaman and a Chanami. First of all, it could be it's a Machlokas Amoiroim whether reciting the Shema is a Doiraisa or the Rabban. So maybe that's shot in the Gemara. The Gemara wants to know whether reciting the Shema is a Doiraisa or whether it's a Rabbanan. V'hachi boile. Kiv and the Sveka the Rabbanan who ain't Sarach Lachsavilu. Right? Oidilma, even if you're going to say it's the Rabbanan, Kiv the Kabbalah's oil Malchus Shemayim who yesh lahachman v'lachai v'lachs. Inami, he go from his apkale ikriya Shema de Rabbanani ve'ain Sarach Doiraisa v'tzarach. Beautiful. In other words, the Charedim is learning 2 pshatim in the question. Either the first pshat is, it's the Rabbanan. This Gemara is the Rabbanan. So what's the question? Safek the Rabbanan L'Kula, right? You have a Safek whether you daven Shemona Esrei or not, you for sure don't have to. Maybe you're not even allowed to. Because Kabbalah is Malchus Shemayim. Or, wait, let's go with the second pshat. Safek is whether it's a Deiraisa or the Rabbanan. And for that, the Gemara answers that Nishme'ina min Hadam answers the Gemara. That's you have to get used to the lashon. Let's learn from this. The Beis Amid Beis Hakoydim Koydim Lachein Liyotzi Yidei Chavos. The Mishnah says that if you read before the time of Shema, the Mishnah's time is Tzeis HaKechavim, you're not Yotz. The Koydim Lachein. Now, what's before Tzeis HaKechavim? What does that include? It doesn't include 5 hours earlier. And as the Gemara is going to introduce now, that you have Vaday Yoim, you have a Vaday Laila. Then you have the in-between. Koydem Tzeis HaKechavim also includes immediately before Tzeis HaKechavim. Immediately before Tzeis HaKechavim is called Bein HaShmoshes. Bein HaShmoshes is a Safek. So the Koydem Lachein is Laf Safeku. And Va'at Omar, that Sarech Likros. Hada Amra is a Raya, that just like if you read it before Tzeis HaKechavim, you have to repeat it. Why? Maybe Bein HaShmoshes is Laila, is Araya and a Chanami. Maybe is not enough, and you have to repeat it. Let's go with the Charedim. Why do you have to repeat it? Because Safek Doiraisa L'Chumra. So Safek Kara, also Tzarech Likrois. Okay. Chavra Daf Beis Amid Beis, 4 lines from the top by the 2 dots. Says the Gemara, Siman L'Davar. What does Siman L'Davar go to? It's going back to the Mishnah, says the Charedim. When the Mishnah says that from when is the time to recite the Shema? And we said, when is that? That's really from Tzeis HaKechavim. So the Gemara is going to say, I have a siman that what? That night begins from Tzeis HaKechavim. What would be the other option? Maybe night begins from Shkia. that even in halach and other areas of the Torah, night begins from shkia. L'mashal, let's go for married men, right? When it comes to all of the hilchos nida, when we speak about an oina hayom, oynas halayla, and let's go. Vestas can be midoraisa, so there has to be a prisha for that 12 hours. From when does it begin? From shkia. From shkia. When a woman has to make a bedika, when does she do it? By day, meaning before shkia. If a woman has to make a hefsek tara, when does she have to do it? Before shkia. If she does it after shkia, she lost that whole day. Oh, Elamah, when it comes to Shema, I have a siman that night is not from shkia. Night is from Tzeis HaKechav. What's the night? I'm not gonna have a full bona fide raya. I'll have an indication. I'll have a zecher. What's a zecher? So according to our pasuk from, I think, the Chemia, let me just get used to the sources, right? And the pasuk in the Chemia, guys, is speaking about Bisman, the beginning of Bayesheni, when Ezra took the Yidden up, even though people were there beforehand. Part of what they did wasn't only the being in Habayis, but they were rebuilding the Chaimes Yerushalmi. And the pasuk says that when they were building the walls of Yerushalayim, there were people that were opposed to it. So you needed to have some people building, and some people needed to stand guard to make sure that those bandits don't stop the building. And we were working. Watch out, we were working. What work? Wasn't only to build, it was build and protection. Half of us, we were holding to the spears. From when we were holding the spears? To protect the builders. Okay, so first of all, you see that the Zman over here is from Alois until Tzeis. Now, in this pasuk, it doesn't say that this is day, correct? And it says, V'hoyu lanu halayla mishmar. At night, we only stood guard, not half, all of us. V'hayoy melach. What does hayoy mean? By the day, it wasn't, by the day, it was only half guards. So what is day? You see over here that day is from Alois HaShachar until Tzeis HaKechavim. So day is until Tzeis. When is night? From Tzeis. Now I want to ask you a simple question. Why isn't this a raya? Why isn't this a raya? That's a proof. So writes the Charedim at the end, like I just quoted. This pasuk is not speaking about Kriya Shema. This pasuk is speaking about concerning the building of the Chaimes Yerushalayim. We consider day from Alois until night. When it comes to Hilchos Melacha, from Alois until night. Like I just mentioned, we don't always follow the same rules. That's not the way halacha works. We just quoted from Hilchos Nida. That's why it's only a zecher. Because who says it's speaking about Kriya Shema? But since we do find in the Torah, it says in Tanakh, in Scripture, that night begins from Tzeis, that will be a zecher, that when it comes to Shema, the Shach means from Tzeis. So what did we do now? We already now automatically introduced the Safek. So we brought in like this Vaday Yom, there's Vaday Laila, and then there is the in-between. And what we're going to have from here until the end of this Amid will be what is known as Tzeis HaKechavim, even though it's very difficult for us, especially since we're living in large cities with pollution, which means that the atmosphere is, Begashmi, is polluted. But the way they would demark night was not by going to the app and looking at Zmanim, which is really easy and fantastic, B'diuk, but they would look to see HaKechavim. So if you ever heard the words, it's Kechavim Beinanim, that's going to be the topic that we're learning right now. And then we're going to also learn about the period that's a suffix, connected to the stars. Let's read it inside. How many stars have to go out for it to be Laila means, guys? Vadei Laila. So Rav Pinchas b'Shem Rab Abba Bar Papa says like this: Koichav Echad, when you only have one star, that's nothing and nothing. It's still Vadayon. Shnayim, here you go. When you have two stars, Safik Laila. Safik Laila, that's the in-between time. When you have Shloisha Vadei Laila. Fragt die Gemara, Shnayim, Safik. It says, Vaksiv, Ad, Tzeis HaKechavim, and we have a rule that whenever there is an expression in the plural, minimum of plural is two. So if you say Ad Tzeis HaKechavim, without giving a number, does that not mean two? Ella miyot kechavim shnayim. Ella is not the answer. You have to get used to the flow. If the gear says Ella, we're gonna follow the gears of the Ois V'Hadar. which is very meduic. So some people take it out because you see in the Talmud Bavli, Ella is the answer. This is part of the kash. If someone tells you a plural expression means two. So what's the three? It doesn't go with the rule. Answers the Gemara. You have to get used to this. You have to start using seichel. The Gemara, the seichel of the Torah. That kadmaya, the first star, loy mischashev, doesn't count at all. In other words, since koichav echad is vadayoim, now you appreciate what Rav Pinchas is saying. So the first one doesn't count. You're right. Koichav means two, but two aside of the first. L'chaim, get used to this logic. So that means three. Now, it's like Tanuvas. The only thing is that by plural. In other words, we're more say Nidus say after 2 stars. 3 stars, yeah, because the first star doesn't count. A lot of saying good. The first, okay, good. Now, guys, we're going to learn that the dot here is a hemshech from Rav Pinchas. Was the Gemara interrupted Rav Pinchas? How can he say that? But we explained how he said it. Now Rav Pinchas says like this: the Erev Shabbos, if you only saw 1 star, what did we say? What is 1 star, guys? Vaday Yom. What's Yom Shmuli? Friday. V'asem Malacha. So if you did Malacha, even when there's 1 star, it's still Friday. Now, what will be the din then? What would you say? What expression would you say? Mutter. Right, we know that by Hilchas Shabbos, mutter is mutter. Pater is pater avalas. Pater because there's a concept called Tosefes Shabbos. That's why. But pater means you won't be chayiv anything. Not mutter because of Tosefes Shabbos. Just to know the looks, but it means it's day. Shnayim and a person did a malacha. Since we have a suffix, that's your bona fide asham toli. What's an asham toli? And almost whenever a person who does something b'shoigig and they're chayiv chatas, if you have a doubt whether you did it or not, you're chayiv an asham toli. Now, really, there's more layers to that. There has to be a schazik isura, but we'll leave that for another time. But that's the time because it's a doubt. So the concept of asham toli, shloisha, if a person after 3 stars, maybe chatas, and let's go on the same thing in the other side. The Mitzvah Shabbos, and v'asim alacha. It's Vadayoim. What does Vadayoim on Shabbos mean? Shabbos, maybe Chatas. Shnayim, after 2 stars, going into Matzei Shabbos, 2 stars, maybe it's already Matzei Shabbos. So then maybe Yasham Toli. Shloisha, again, guys, the word pater, really, it means mutter. It's not mutter because there's something called Tosefes Shabbos. Right after 3 stars, today we add, I think, 4 minutes in this Manam calendar. They didn't have minutes. But right after 3, it's pater. Now, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yosi, Berebi, Bun, the word boy, guys, what does boy mean in Talmud Bavli? Boy means a boy, an inquiry. Says the Charedim that boy, I'm very important. Hi, boy, here in Talmud Yerushalmi, lav Elohi. We're not asking a question. Elo omer davar b'pshitus v'yesh kayoytze boy harbe b'Yerushalmi. So let's start getting used to the fact that the verbiage is not the same. So boy means he's making a statement. What's a statement? In Tamar, other people are going to eat Tamar. Now I want you to know that the Pnei Moshe and others learned that the word eat Tamar means im tim soloimer. We're not going that way. We're going to learn with the Chareid. We're going to go with that what? That in Tamar, in Yom, Yiddish, Tamar Zog, yes, say, he's making a statement. So you have the words, boy, in Tamar, look how it's different. And I want you to know, if you have to be misboinen in this, it's not just semantics, it's a whole different way of thinking. They use the words boy. What does an inquiry mean? Inquiry means look into something. So in Bavli, when you say look into it, you get confused. When you start looking into it, oh, could be like this, could be like that. And the Madreg of the Yerushalmi, the moment you look into it, it's clear. You look in deeper, it's showing right away, there's lichtigkeit. Look in, say that what? Shnayim Safek. Now that we said Shnayim Safek, now we're going to make an application. Rosh Nekechavim Erev Shabbos. What did we say then? What's Tukechavim? We said it's a suffix, right? The Hisruboy and Adim told the person, hey, it might be Shabbos, don't do a malacha. And v'asam malacha. What did Was he Mechalel Shabbos? We don't know. But 1 second. And now Rosh Nekechavim b'Matzoi Shabbos. And again v'Hisrubai. V'asim Alacha. So now says Rabbi Yossi Berabun is Manavshach. Right? In Yiddish, mim Manavshach. I don't know where we got the extra mem from, but that's the Lashon Chazal is Manavshach. What is Mitai Nefesh? In other words, no matter how you look at it, you're going to be Chai V'chat. Right? The last narrow line. Im Rishonim Yoimheim. Well, if you, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Not Chatos, we're speaking about a Hasra. Very good. Skila. Here you go. Im Rishonim Heim. Afu Achronim Yoimheim. V'chai Val Achronim. Im Achronim Laila. Afu Rishonim Laila. V'chai Val Rishonim. Hold on a second. Now, in Talmud Bavli, in Masechta Makis, Daf Tezvav, or if your kid would wake up, he'll correct us if we're on the wrong daf, or the Gabai Danny. So 1 second, we have a whole machloikis, whether Hasra, Safik, Shmei Hasra, or Laf Shmei Hasra. So either the pshat here in the Yerushalmi is that our Gemara is going with the Shita that we don't care if there's Hasra, Safik. Or many Achronim here point out, no, even if we're going to follow that Hasra, Safik is taken not a proper way of giving a Hasra, what happened is that when the person was going to do a malacha, Erev Shabbos, when there's two Kechavim, he was told, listen, if you're going to do this now and you're going to do another malacha tomorrow night after the Tukei Chavim, Zosta Wissen sein, that Manavshach, you're going to be Chayv Skila. That was the Hasra Lechatchila. And that's what happened. That's the case over here. Now, let's go to the next case. Ra, right, the second wide line, by the dot. Rosh,
once again, in that case, does he have to repeat the Hasra at the end of Shabbos? And say to him again?
So I want to say, for sure, he has to repeat Asra because the whole concept of being Asra, right, is maybe the person will forget. I'm reminding you. I told you that yesterday. Very good, Dan. Now, but it's not, in other words, it won't be Asra Safik because the Hasra Lechatchila was for both. I'm reminding you that yesterday I warned you, and you did it. Very good. Okay. Now, Rosh Nekechavim Erev Shabbos. Let's go to another malach. Let's go to a specific malach. So if you remember by Hilchah Shabbos, almost always, not everything, for almost all of the Lamates Malachas, there's a shear. And even though we're going to go with Rabbi Yechanan that the Chatzi shear is also midoraisa, but you're not going to be punished for it. The shear of reaping of Ktsira is not a gregeres only. Grain in the shear of a gregeres. So, but Chatzi gregeres is only a Chatzi shear, right? Same concept. So if you were koitzik a Chatzi gregeres b'shachris, 1 second. Come on. So what do you have, guys? Do you have a half a share shmuli? Maybe. You don't even know if you have a chatzi share. Then b'shachris, b'kotza chatzi gregeres, vadai, a half a share. Maybe a whole share. And again, Rosh Neker from Matzoi Shabbos, b'kotza chatzi gregeres, fight it. I'm going to say manavshach, im rishonim yoimeim. So what happened? So the chatzi that you did at Shabbos, Naftali, you look very excited, is nothing. But the problem is you have the chatzi of Shachris, and then you have the chatzi of the Yoim going out of Shabbos. And now the latter one, the tztarav shel Shachris, im shel Motzei Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos obviously doesn't mean Motzei Shabbos. V'chayv al achreinim. But im hu achreinim laila, then after rishonim laila. The tztarav shel Shachris im laila Shabbos v'chayv al rishonim. Beautiful. And now, Zakti Gemara, Hadod the Tamar. I want you to know this is important to finish to close this topic. So when we speak about Kechavim, I know that for us, again, these are words. We were not educated to know how to apply it. But the Gemara is going to say now that there are different types of Kechavim. And let's go with the words. There are larger Kechavim. Then you have the intermediate, the Kechavim Beinanim. And the Gemara wants to point out that when are we saying that after Shloisha Kechavim, only then, that was the Rapinchas, is Vadai Laila, it's only 3 Kechavim Beinanim. If you had a larger star plus 2, it won't be Vadai Laila. That's the last line of the Amid, of the Dav. Hadod the Tema. Be'elain, what are we talking about? Be'elain, in those what? Those stars. The leis or chayseyon mischamiya biyamama. Mischamiya, if you remember on Daf Beis Amadalaf, on the first line on the top, we're going to Tzura Sadaf, it says Asi Chamei. Asi Chamei, we learned in the Charedim, it means boy re'ei. see. So now we have the word in Yerushalmi, mischamia. In Yiddish, it means to warm up. Not over here. Here it means to see. The ones that are seen during the day, they don't count, right? Be'ilain, you get Shuki? What are the three stars? The stars, the least that we don't see them during the day, not the large stars. Daf Gimel Amud Aleph on the top, Bram Aber. Bram means however. Be'ilain, the Oirchahoin, Mischamia, Biyamama. The ones that are seen during the day, Loi Mish'aren Bohain. We don't count them. That's the way we learn in the Gemara. You know, it's all of the three stars have to be Kechavam Beinanim. And then we're going to learn one more line. That's the way we're learning the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yosi Berabun. Let me give you an example. Ubelachud, and in actuality, right? The Yischamhoin to Loisa Kechavim, that it has to be three stars. Bar min hada koichavta, a side of the star called koichavta. In other words, koichavta is the mashal that Rabbi Yosi Berabun is using as a star that's not Beinanim. It's a large star. It can't be counted one of the three. What star is the koichavta? So you have a whole machlekes here amongst the Achrayim. We're going to go with the pshat that it's Venus. Okay, let's learn the Hagos Hagra. Let's start learning all of the commentators. So right, Keichavim bar min hadein koichavta, Perush, right? So he's adding over here that what we mean to say is we need to have the three stars. Sho'imdim gimel keichavim biyachad v'nirim biyachad. That's one pshat, and in the parentheses, v'nishamati michacham echad, l'kaim girsas asverim sholanu bar min hadein koichavta. That's the Hagra, what we just typed. You see in the parentheses, shuhu shem koichav k'deisa b'Yerushalmi b'samuch. And I want you to know that, just to know like this, that if whoever learns over there the Sefer Yetzirah, there is when he speaks about Venus. So over there's a brayso of Shmuel HaKatan that speaks about the influence of Venus. I'm quoting over there from the brayso is grace and love and children and fruitfulness. Interesting that these are koiches that come in before the night. It's not shaykh to the night. The night comes in already with those koiches. So we don't count Venus. It has to be three kechavim beinanim.
All right, Venus is called the morning star.
Count small stars, but we don't look for small stars because we're looking for three beinanim stars. What were you saying?
That way, Venus is called the morning star. So maybe that's
Venus is called the morning star by the Goyim. By the Yidden, it's called the star that is so bright that even before it's dark, it already appears in the sky, and it cannot even be counted for one of the three.
Got it.
And again, why can't it be counted?
In other words, night, let's go all with Rav Pinchas. Night means one star Beinani B'chlal is not counted. One star Beinani. Koichavim L'Lashon Rabim is two plus one. You have to have the three stars Beinani, and the Gemara is concluding, and don't count for any of them, the larger ones.
So the larger ones don't count, and the smaller ones don't count, according to what we're learning today.
The smaller ones have other count, but you can't. But you're looking at the wrong ones if you're looking for the smaller ones. It's way beyond. It's already into the night when you see even the Bain. And I'm sorry, Dan. The smaller ones is Vadei Laila, but even the Beinanim is already Vadei Laila. Even when you have three Kechavim Beinanim, you would argue that the bigger the star, the more you can see it during the day. Even the Beinanim, when you have three, it's already